Thank you so much. Wow, that's quite a warm-up. Hard act to follow. I also wanted to thank Paul Manners for the faith, the confidence in me that one, I could contribute something at the last session, kind of a daunting thought. Two, that I could do the session right after lunch. All the research shows, of course, that that's not the best session. So thanks, Paul. I appreciate that confidence in me. And third, that the invitation to do a bit of broadcast at a conference that, in fact, has been wonderful, creative, and innovative in terms of not simply doing broadcast. It was great. At the last workshop, we even ended up, we each got a lollipop. Thanks to Leslie Brown. That was wonderful. So it's just great to be here, and I don't know if you get a chance later, and I don't know if I have the really right to do this, but I want to say on behalf of all of us to thank you, Paul and Sophie, for just a tremendous event. It's just been a thrill being here, and I'm going to do my best. I must say I'm encouraged by the fact that I guess Paul and Sophie said, well, we can't just invite Chad, we'll have to invite half of Canada over to, and I have so many great colleagues. I want a special tribute to Martin Taylor, who's right here, who worked on the Shirk Council with me and has been a great leader for years in Canada and a friend. It's great to see him here along with my colleagues from University of Victoria and elsewhere. That's great, so I'm encouraged by that. And I think it's also just a great opportunity for us to think together because as now being at a funding agency, I'm in my 8th year. Normally I'm a professor of history, but I've engaged in New World now for 8 years, and it's been great. In the room now are partners that we've been working with a lot, ESRC, HRC, and so on. And that's I'm encouraged by that as well. So let's see if I can contribute something to this and complement some of the presentations we've seen. And my focus is going to be on the notion of public engagement as a way to develop talent, gain insight, and make a better future. So my emphasis here is on the notion of why public engagement is really a path forward there. And I'm going to link that to the notion that as a result of that, we are in a Kuhnian paradigm shifting period in which we are reimagining campuses in the digital age. And I'm going to try to put that all together very, very quickly. You're going to get the sense, I think you're drinking from a fire hose. All these slides are here, and I'm going to share them with you. We're going to be just highlighting many things. I must say, over the last 2 days, my presentation has grown way longer than I can really spend with you by people saying to me, well, Chad, you're going to talk about that, aren't you? And I've learned, and again, I learned in order to get that lollipop at that other session, I learned that inclusion is very good. So I didn't want to leave anything out. But anyway, we're going to go really quickly, but it's all available to you. I'm going to start quickly. Northrop Frye, as you may know, a famous Canadian author, a world-famous author, and in his volume, The Educated Imagination, he emphasized the fact that really our mission is take advantage of our imagination and really imagine the society we want to live in. And I think I want to put the emphasis on the fact that we're creating our future, and that's been a key theme of much of our work. Recently in Canada, we launched the Imagining Canada's Future because we really felt that there was a little sense of reacting to, and there was a little emphasis on what's going to happen. And we want to put the emphasis on the fact that the future is our creation. And out of this, in the consultation across Canada and internationally, Sheila Moorcroft, Shaping Tomorrow from UK was involved, and many of you, we came up with 6 future challenge areas, and one of them out of all that was people saying, in fact, that campuses must be reimagined, and that's one of those future challenges. So it's in that context that we're speaking, and I also want to now, when we travel, we all want to be very proud of the fact that Alice Munro, as you may have noticed, got a Nobel Prize, and one of the aspects of her work that I want to highlight here is the notion of really problematizing some things we take for granted. In her case, she's a writer who writes short stories. Not this first time, obviously, a Nobel Prize ever awarded to someone writing short stories, and she poses, as I said, a larger question about reputation itself. and this notion of the whole idea of importance and what's that mean. And I problematizing that, I think that's at the heart of what we're up to as well. My argument today, and it's going to go really, really quickly again, our research shows that I get at most 18 minutes before you start thinking about dinner or thinking about somewhere else. And so broadcast does not work well. We're going to go really, really quickly. But what I want to share with you is a notion, again, and this comes out of a lot of research, that deep conceptual changes are underway. I'm going to highlight 3. Related to that, and I think a claim I'm going to make, is that in fact we're at a period when a new focus on understanding people is going to lead to the 21st century being defined as the time in which, for the first time historically ever, human beings took the challenge seriously of understanding human beings. And we did learn a lot, and in terms of understanding and knowledge about people, we did go ahead. And related to all that is the fact that we are reimagining campuses in ways that you've heard about already, in a way that campuses have been redefined over the centuries, and one of the reasons why they're among the most enduring institutions since the Middle Ages. So, are we ready? Here we go. What are the deep conceptual changes? Complexity, we have fundamentally rethought how we think about complexity. Diversity, fundamentally rethought that. And creativity. What do I mean? Let's start. Creativity, seems to me we have fundamentally gone from a notion of creativity as being really the attribute of a very small group of creators, usually a preordained elite, and the rest of us apply whatever they create, to now rethinking about creativity as being everywhere. And how do we really imagine that in terms of creativity as not being the possession of a small group? Diversity, we've gone from thinking about diversity as a problem. We've spent centuries creating societies and so on based on the notion that uniformity is good, diversity is wrong, whether it's single state nations, on and on, languages, and so on. So we now believe that diversity is the foundation of strength and resilience. And this is across fields, economic diversity, genetic diversity, on and on. Complexity. I think we've gone from the conviction that complexity is only apparent if we break things down into their component parts. They're really simple if we look closely enough to a recognition of this complexity as a common phenomena in the interrelationships. And you can think about all the implications of that in many, many ways. Secondly, I want to argue, in fact, that this recognition of you know what? We have humans. And I think if you think back over the years, and I know, you've all spent that, I'm an historian, we say, study aspects of the 19th century and so on, and the reaction, for example, spent a lot of time looking at demographic rates, fertility and so on. You say that to a neighbor, they'll say, you don't know why people have babies? Or you'll say, well, you're looking at various patterns and so on, and neighbors will say, you think you're going to explain why people have babies? So it's a very interesting kind of phenomenon. Now we're getting systematic about that, and that's why the social science humanities, I think, and a lot of what you're talking about really is about people, human thought and behavior in the past and present, trying to understand that and then using that to build a better future, and I think that's how we're thinking about this. Well, let's walk across society then. Well, you say, new understandings of people rethinking all this. What do you really mean here? Well, my argument's going to be, and a lot of research shows that the innovative businesses, organizations now seek to be. Let's walk across the sectors. In the private sector, everything now, the focus is on customers. Customer focus in the marketplace. Who are customers? Let's learn about them, on and on. In service industry, who are those users? What are they doing? What do they want? And so on, in terms of collaboration. Workplaces, who ever thought about employee-empowered workplaces? Used to be, you hired someone, you said, look, I'll pay you, and you do what you're told, sit there, and now we know productivity, on and on. Companies realize this. It's really about employee empowerment, how that can work. Citizen engagement in politics, you've seen this over and over now. Politicians desperately trying to engage in citizens in new ways. Schools, who knew? We spent 200-300 years building school systems that never really asked the question, how do children learn? In recent decades, we've been starting to do that, and we now know that the way they were organized for a few hundred years didn't work very well. And all the evidence shows, at least, that it's changing. And health, who knew? It's really about patients, patient-oriented health, which is now a great strategic focus, which is really interesting. So we've gone from thinking about whether it's in the private sector, it's really the businesses getting great ideas, getting advertising groups and convincing people of that push sort of model, whether it's workplace command and control, whether it's schools, all about the teacher, whether it's medicine, all about the doctor, on and on. There's a whole new focus now, and of course all of these are the same people, which is really interesting. The way this links to the digital age, and I think this is really important, is that this new thinking about complexity, diversity, creativity, the kind of deep conceptual changes are being enabled by digital technologies. And that's why all the predictions about the use of digital technologies have gone beyond what they were expected. Why? Because they are enabling deep conceptual changes. And if you think about the digital age in terms of it being a communications revolution, on and on, it's really at the heart of this engagement dossier that we've been talking about, and that's the link I want to make. So what does that mean? Well, it means in the sense of campuses, we are really redefining how we think about education. We're moving from that transmission of knowledge model to that we now know research so far suggests does not work well. And again, I want to emphasize that the research underpinning this is really the key. In other words, we're not changing just out of the blue. We're changing because the evidence suggests that, right? So in terms of learning outcomes and so on, we now know we're trying to move toward learning content and competencies, what we like to call the development of talent. Research used to be back to that model in terms of how do you understand something? You divide it up into a million little pieces. We each take a little piece, and then you add it all up, and you understand the whole thing. Now we know that doesn't work well. It just simply doesn't work well. New expressions, research T, we'll talk about that. And same way with innovation. We know, for example, in terms of how do you make a better world and so on, the technology transfer hope, the evidence suggests it just doesn't work. Tech transfer offices and universities lose money, on and on. It's just not a good way to think about commercialization or anything else. So what does that mean? What are the new modes of engagement? Across campuses, for the first time, the conversations now, I think, we've been talking about interdisciplinarity and so on for decades now, but in fact, I think we're trying to take seriously. Why? Because we know that the vertical structures aren't going to work well. Similarly, connecting campuses and communities. The point there is not that we're doing this out of, all kinds of different motivations. We're doing this because this is now how we think we're going to do better in terms of learning, advancing knowledge and understanding, building a better world, all of that. And then, of course, international, because so much of the challenges we face are not defined geopolitically in boundaries like that. So all this connects and helps us understand innovations like flipping classrooms and so on, and it also explains Steve Jobs in terms of different kind of business strategies. And I think this is really important, where the best technology does not win. And in fact, in the case of Apple, all reports say they did have the best technology in the 1980s and they lost badly. Now they don't have the best technology and they're winning. Why is it? Because it's an understanding of people, and I think that's and then you see that more and more, the notion of getting to understand people is the most critical business strategy today. So it seems to me that that's the kind of deep shift that we're talking about, and new conversations. Business innovation, social innovation, which used to be quite separate, they're now starting to come together. And a lot of the most innovative groups are really kind of rethinking that in terms of a much more integrated and connected model of innovation. This means that the old lab to market technology transfer notion of how campuses are going to help make a better world is being rejected. We talk about knowledge mobilization much more, and again, it's a much more interactive, non-linear kind of engagement, that T-shaped, and you can think about that in many, many different ways, whether it's in terms of academic programs, how you pursue research programs, the relationship between specific institutions and each other. Used to be, for example, we would just add up the household, the church, the place of work, and so on. And now we understand that those connections are really at the heart of it. All those kind of innovations in terms of academic programs, co-op programs, in-service learning, internships, being active in research projects that transcend the campus community, exchange programs, on and on. So to summarize all that quickly, you go from that campus outward push to now a push and pull. No, it used to have one-way flows, now multi-directional. Used to be all about tech transfer, now it's people moving ideas and knowledge. Used to be that linear recipe, now non-linear engagement. Used to be that expert to receptors kind of approach, now it's multi-sector innovation participants, tool makers, all about the stuff, and now it's how it's used, what you do with it. Used to be a lot of emphasis on STEM disciplines. Campuses are going to help make a better world, basically on the STEM side of things, and now we know it's everyone's involved in that across social science, humanities, art and design. Oh, it used to be quite autonomous, you add it up, and now it's networks, partnerships, collaboration, clusters. Used to be physical contact, and now it's also virtual. So we have a new sense of campuses really at the heart of communities, and those boundaries are blurring. That we talked about that earlier in one of the workshops, and it's a very different notion. So what are we doing at SSHRC? What have we been doing in really trying to pursue this, enable this? Starting with our first strategic plan in 2006-07. First thing we did is worry about governance. We said if we're going to help embrace this new world, we got to change our governance. And it used to be the president, me, was appointed along with leaders from the academic community. And now we've diversified that. It's half academic community and half leaders from the larger society, private, public, nonprofit sector. We also work closely and develop close links with the learned societies across Canada through the Federation of the Humanities and Social Sciences. We also have our SSHRC leaders in senior administration in every campus across Canada. We bring them together, and you can read some of their reports and so on. We also wanted to draw on some of the innovative approaches where we picked up a lot of this reimagining campuses and thinking about different learning, ways of learning and so on. And I think emphasized a few times, our Aboriginal research was really probably the first that really highlighted the extent to which the old broadcast, the old sort of push was just not going to work. And we're building on that. We're trying to take that not just with Aboriginal groups, but all, and trying to really embrace the multiple ways of knowing in all communities in a much bigger sense. Similarly, our research creation, where we think about what are the ways in which we think about research and kinds of research activities and so on. And our research creation brings into it the possibility of expressing your research results in artistic articulations and so on. And we try to build that in. How do we build all that in? We've also been studying the research community in changing ways. And this is one of my favorite questions out of a systematic survey that we did. And we asked scholars across the country. We have a lot of emails. We asked basically every scholar in Canada on a scale ranging from extremely interdisciplinary to exclusively disciplinary. How would you characterize your research? So we're going to break it into 4 groups. Just very quickly imagine on the left is going to be exclusively disciplinary, and on the right is going to be extremely interdisciplinary, and 2 in the middle. So just imagine in your head how those percentages go. We were pretty knocked out. It has become not cool to call yourself exclusively disciplinary. And again, this is an anonymous survey. No one's ever going to know. And it's famous. And it's across fields. We always like throwing history there just because. And we've analyzed this many different ways. So clearly, the T-shaped kind of mentality is in our community. This is a big emphasis for us. We used to have granting council, social science, humanities, natural science, engineering, medical research council, pretty siloed, and we've really worked hard to update that along with the Canada Foundation for Innovation that funds research infrastructure. We've really tried to move over that. We also took a look at what we call our program architecture. And we started saying, is this really enabling the best of 21st century research? What can we do? And we decided in the end, rather than try to tinker, add, and subtract, and so on, to just erase the board. And through engagement with our leaders, on and on, over and over, we developed much simpler. We went from 37 different programs to basically 3 underpinned by the possibility in all of them of partnerships. And our effort, what we're trying to do here is to really open up to creative open spaces and say this changing world of research, let's take out as many requirements as we possibly can in terms of how you do that and so on, and just see what happens. And we were really surprised. Just in the one group partnerships, for example, and again, there was no brownie points for certain kinds of partnerships. Could be on campus, across campus, could be all sorts of things. And what we found in just our second competition, we looked at 153 applications, 93% included partners beyond campus. And again, there was no bonus points for doing that. It was just what you wanted to do. 50% with international partners, 65% nonprofit, 45 public sector, 27 with private sector. So clearly, and they leverage money and so on, so clearly there was something there that we found really, really interesting. We also moved away from the notion of peer review. We call it merit review now. The notion of the only people in the world are really appropriate to evaluate me are people just like me. And we wanted to get away from that notion of, us drinking our own bathwater and so on. So we're embracing the notion of merit review. We're also saying within all that, knowledge mobilization, you must have a knowledge mobilization plan. So within this structure, we're certainly encouraging certain kind of behaviors and so on, and we talk about it. We could try to conceptualize that. And again, it's straight out of the research. We're not making this up. We're also animating as much as possible under the leadership of Canada's Governor General, David Johnston, for example. We're bringing together sectors all the time, this campus community collaboration, for example, and really trying to foster these discussions as much as possible. We're working internationally. I've mentioned before, the digging into data has been one of the most successful. Again, in asking all researchers to really help us take advantage of the data deluge and do that in really intelligent, sensitive, and engaged kind of ways. Canada, US, UK, and the Netherlands. It's been a world of press coverage about this, which is really interesting, really, really innovative, and I think that's been exciting. In terms of a suite of awards, we said, let's embrace some of these words that we've been scared of a little bit. I can remember when I started, there was a little debate about relevance. Some of my colleagues very uneasy with that word. So I got in a big group, one of my early talks, some of you heard me talk about this, and I said, okay, who has devoted their life to a research topic that they feel is irrelevant? Anyway, so we've said, what about the word impact? And then we went on, obviously, to talk about relevance and how you think about that and so on. So we said, we've heard a lot about impact. We redefined all our awards in terms of scholarly awards. Our impact, a suite of prizes under impact, and we've taken ownership of that word and defined it in ways that I think work well. We've also done a lot of work on how we tell our story, and we have our Storytellers Challenge. I invite you to come into YouTube, see last year's winner. It's just out. The new competition's out now, and I think it's really exciting to get 3 minutes. This is to students, 3 minutes, tell your story. It's along the side of the 1 minute thesis, on and on. It's really exciting, creative, and it's terrific. We're also focused on trying to advance digital scholarship, and we don't think universities are all making the analog to digital transition as quickly as I think our students want, as our researchers want. There's a lot of issues around that, and we're trying to contribute on that scale. Having this debate internationally, we just had the World Social Science Forum in Montreal, for example, 60 countries from around the world, and I think there's some good momentum starting. Most exciting, we launched at that meeting the start of the Transatlantic Platform of Social Science and Humanities, thanks to the European Commission. SHRC is leading the America side of that, Canada, US, Mexico, and Brazil, all the European countries led by NWO in the Netherlands, and we are really, it's a 3-year initiative to really facilitate, enable better international research collaboration. I invite all of you to think about that. Is there a major initiative that we could help you nurture and work on with a view toward perhaps a major application to Horizons 2020. In that, we're focusing on digital as perhaps one of the ways in which we can engage much more successfully. I want to close by just reminding us that it was really only 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago now, that Albert Einstein had a paper, pencil, doing thought experiments And it was during the 20th century that a world of attention was paid in terms of thinking that through, colliding particles and so on. I think most people say a lot of steps forward, a lot of ways to go, but steps forward. Similarly, this is from 1952, after the Second World War. People wanted to go to space, and you know, built on lots of tradition and so on. Well, we got serious about that and went to space. I think when we think about our century and our descendants and so on look back at us, I think all of us, it's really incumbent on us to try to see if we can make the kind of world that is possible, I think, thanks to a lot of your work and a lot of new thinking, a lot of conceptual changes enabled by digital technologies and focused on people. Thank you so much.